The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Bhishma Parva. Section 71, Bhishma Parva continued. Sanjaya said, beholding his brothers and the other kings engaged in battle with Bhishma, Dhananjaya with weapons upraised rushed against the son of Ganga. Hearing the blare of Panchajanya and the twang of the bow Gandiva and seeing also the standard of Pritha's son, a great fear entered our hearts. And the standard that we beheld, O king, of the wielder of Gandiva bore the device of lion's tail and looked like a blazing mountain in the welkin. Beautiful and of celestial workmanship, it was variegated with diverse hues and looking like a risen comet, it could not be obstructed by trees. And in that great battle, the warriors beheld Gandiva, the back of whose staff was decked with pure gold and which looked beautiful like a flash of lightning in the midst of a mass of clouds in the firmament. And while slaying the combatants of thy army, the shouts we heard uttered by Arjuna seemed to resemble the loud roars of Indra himself, and the slaps also of his palms were frightfully loud. Like a roaring mass of clouds charged with lightning and aided by a raging tempest, Arjuna incessantly poured his arrowy showers on all sides, completely shrouding the 10 points of the compass. Dhananjaya then, possessed of terrible weapons, quickly proceeded towards the son of Ganga. Deprived of our senses in consequence of his weapons, we could not then distinguish the east from the west. And thy warriors then, O bull of Bharata's race, their animals tired, steeds slain and hearts depressed, thoroughly confounded and huddling close to one another, sought Bhishma's protection along with all thy sons. And in that battle Bhishma the son of Santanu became their protector. Struck with fear, car warriors jumping down from their cars, cavalry soldiers jumping down from the backs of their steeds, and the foot soldiers where they stood all began to fall down on the earth. Hearing the twang of Gandiva that resembled the roar of the thunder, all thy warriors were struck with fear and seemed, O Bharata, to melt away. Then, O king, with many huge and fleet steeds of the Kamboja breed, and surrounded by many thousand of Gopas with a large Gopayana force and supported by the Madras, the Soviras, the Gandharas and the Trigatas, and surrounded by all the principal Kalingas, the king of the Kalingas and King Jayadratha accompanied by all the kings and supported by a large force of diverse races with Dusasana at their head, and 14,000 principal horsemen, urged by thy son, surrounded the son of Suvala, for supporting him. Then in that battle all the Pandavas united together, and riding on separate cars and animals began, O bull of Bharata's race, to slaughter thy troops. And the dust raised by car warriors and steeds and foot soldiers, looking like a mass of clouds, made the field of battle exceedingly awful. And with a large force consisting of elephants, steeds and cars, and armed with lances and bearded darts and broad-headed shafts, Bhishma engaged in battle with the diadem-decked Arjuna. And the king of Avanti engaged with the ruler of Kasi, and the ruler of the Sindhus engaged with Bhimasena. And King Yudhishthira with his sons and counsellors engaged with Salya the famous chief of the Madras. And Vikarna engaged with Sahadeva, and Chitrasena with Sikhundin. And the Matsyas, O king, engaged with Duryodhana, and Sakuni and Drupada and Chekitna, and that mighty car warrior Satyaki engaged in battle with the high-souled Drona aided by his son. And Kripa and Kritavarman both rushed against Dhrishtadyumna. And thus, all over the field, rushing bodies of horses, of elephants and cars, engaged with one another in battle. And although there were no clouds in the sky, yet flashes of lightning were seen. And all the points of the compass were covered with dust. And, O king, fierce meteors were seen falling with thundering noise. And violent winds blew and a shower of dust fell from above. And the sun, covered by the dust raised by the troops, disappeared in the firmament. And all the warriors, covered by that dust and battling with weapons, were deprived of their senses. And the sound made by weapons, all capable of penetrating through every armor and hurled from heroic arms, became a tremendous uproar. And O bull of Bharata's race, weapons hurled from excellent arms and possessed of stellar brightness, illumined the whole welkin. And variegated shields made of bulls' hides and embossed with gold were strewn, O bull of Bharata's race, all over the field. And heads and limbs were seen falling on all sides, cut off with swords and scimitars possessed of solar effulgence. And great car warriors, the wheels, axles, and boxes of whose cars were broken, fell down on the ground, their steeds slain and their tall standards tumbling down. And many car warriors having been slain, their steeds mangled with weapons, fell down as they ran dragging the cars to which they were yoked. And in many places over the field, excellent steeds afflicted with arrows, with limbs mangled, and with their traces on, ran dragging the car yokes after them. And many car warriors with their charioteers and steeds were seen oaking, to be crushed by single elephants endued with great strength. And in that battle, in the midst of large forces, many elephants, scenting the odor of the temporal juice of their compeers, began to snuff the breeze repeatedly. And the whole field was strewn with slain elephants, deprived of life by means of broad-headed shafts and falling down with the wooden edifices and the guides on their backs. And many elephants in the midst of large forces crushed, with the standards and warriors on their backs, by huge compeers urged by their guides, fell down on the field. And many car shafts soaking, were seen to be broken in that battle by huge elephants using their trunks, each of which resembled the trunk of the prince of elephants called Airavata. And many car warriors also in that conflict, the jalas of whose cars had been broken, were like branches of trees dragged down by tuskers, seized by the hair of their heads and thrashed violently on the ground were crushed into shapeless masses. And other huge elephants, dragging cars that were entangled with other cars, ran in all directions shrieking loudly. And those elephants thus dragging those cars, looked like others of their species dragging lotus stalks growing in lakes. And thus was that vast field of battle strewn over with cavalry soldiers and foot soldiers and great car warriors and standards. Thus ends the 71st section in the Bhishma Parva of the Bhishma Parva. Section 72, Bhishma Parva continued. Sanjaya said, Seconded with Virata, king of the Matsyas, speedily approached Bhishma, that invincible and mighty bowman. And Dhananjaya encountered Drona and Kripa, and Vikarna and many other kings, brave in battle, all mighty bowmen endued with great strength, as also that mighty bowman, the ruler of the Sindhus supported by his friends and kinsmen and many kings of the west and the south also, O bull of Bharata's race. And Bhimasena proceeded against that mighty bowman, viz., thy vindictive son Duryodhana and also against Dusaha. And Sahadeva proceeded against those invincible warriors, viz., Sakuni and that mighty car warrior Uluka, those great bowmen who were sire and son. And that mighty car warrior Yudhishthira, deceitfully treated by thy son, proceeded in that battle, O king, against the elephant division of the Kauravas. And that son of Pandhu and Madri, viz., the heroic Nakula capable of wringing tears from the foe, engaged in battle with the excellent car warriors of the Trigatas. And those invincible warriors, viz., Satyaki and Chekitna, and the mighty son of Subhadra, proceeded against Salya and the Kaikeyas. And Drishtaketu and the Rakshasa Ghatotkacha, both invincible in battle, proceeded against the car division of thy sons. And that mighty car warrior Drishtadhyumna, that generalissimo of the Pandava forces of immeasurable soul, engaged in battle, O king, with Drona of fierce achievements. And it was thus that those heroic and mighty bowmen of thy army and the Pandavas engaged in battle began to strike one another. And when the sun had reached the meridian and the sky was brilliantly illumined by his rays, the Kauravas and the Pandavas began to slay one another. Then cars, furnished with standards from whose tops pennons were afloat, variegated with gold and covered with tiger skins, looked beautiful as they moved on the field of battle. And the shouts of warriors engaged in battle from desire of vanquishing one another became as loud as leonine roars. And that encounter which we beheld between the heroic Srinjayas and the Kurus was fierce in the extreme and highly wonderful. And in consequence of the arrows shot all around, we could not, O king, distinguish, O chastiser of foes, the firmament, the sun and the cardinal and the subsidiary points of the compass. And the splendor, like that of the blue lotus, of darts with polished points, of bearded lances hurled at the foe, of well-tempered sabres and scimitars, of variegated coats of mail and of the ornaments on the persons of the warriors, illumined the welkin and the cardinal and the subsidiary points with its effulgence. And the field of battle in many places, O king, shone in consequence of the bodies of monarchs whose effulgence resembled that of the moon and the sun. And brave warriors, tigers among men, shone in that battle, O king, like the planets in the firmament. And Bhishma, that foremost of warriors, excited with rage, checked the mighty Bhimasena in the very sight of the troops. And the impetus shafts shot by Bhishma, furnished with golden wings and wetted on stone and rubbed with oil, pierced Bhima in that battle. Then Bhimasena, endued with great strength, hurled at him, O Bharata, a dart of fierce impetuosity that resembled a wrathful snake, but Bhishma in that combat cut off with straight shafts that dart with staff made of gold and difficult of being borne, as it coursed impetuously towards him. And with another broad-headed shaft, sharp and well-tempered, he cut off Bhimasena's bow, O Bharata, into two parts. Then, O king, in that battle Satyaki, coming quickly towards Bhishma, pierced thy sire with innumerable keen-edged and sharp-pointed shafts of fierce impetuosity shot from his bowstring drawn to the ear. Then Bhishma, aiming an exceedingly fierce shaft, felled the charioteer of the Vrishni hero from his box in the car. And when the charioteer of Satyaki's car was thus slain, his steeds, O king, bolted away. Endued with the speed of the tempest or the mind, they ran wild over the field. Then cries were uttered by the whole army, which became a loud uproar. An exclamation of, "Oh, and alas!" arose from the high-souled warriors of the Pandava army. And those cries said, "Run! Seize! Check the horses! Go in haste!" And this uproar followed Yuyudhana's car. Meanwhile, Bhishma the son of Santanu began to slay the Pandava forces like Indra slaying the Danavas. But the Panchalas and the Somakas, those slain by Bhishma thus, forming yet a laudable resolution, rushed towards Bhishma. And other warriors of the Pandava army, headed by Dhrishtadyumna and desirous of slaughtering the ranks of thy son, rushed towards Santanu's son in that battle. And so also, O king, the warriors of thy army headed by Bhishma and Drona, impetuously rushed towards their foes. And thereupon another battle took place. Thus ends the 72nd section in the Bhishmavada Parva of the Bhishma Parva. Section 73, Bhishmavada Parva continued. Sanjaya said, King Virata then pierced that mighty warrior, viz. Bhishma, with 3 shafts. And that great warrior pierced his antagonist's steeds also with 3 shafts furnished with golden wings. And that terrible bowman and mighty warrior of firm hand, viz. Drona's son, pierced with 6 shafts the welder of Gandiva between his 2 breasts. Thereupon that grinder of foes, viz. Falguni, that slayer of hostile heroes, cut off Aswathaman's bow and deeply pierced him in return with 5 shafts. Deprived of his senses by anger and unable to bear the cutting off of his bow in that battle, Drona's son, taking up another bow that was tougher, pierced Falguni, O king, with 90 sharp shafts, and Vasudeva also with 70 fierce arrows. Then, with eyes red in wrath, Falguni, with Krishna breathing long and hot breaths, reflected for a moment. Firmly grasping the bow with his left hand, that grinder of force, Vis, the wielder of Gandiva, excited with rage, fixed on his bowstring a number of fierce shafts, sharp and perfectly straight and capable of taking the foe's life. And that foremost of mighty men speedily pierced Drona's son in that battle with those arrows. And those arrows, penetrating through his armor, drank his lifeblood. But though thus pierced by the wielder of Gandiva, Drona's son wavered not. Shooting in return similar arrows at Partha, he stayed unperturbed in that battle, desirous, O king, of protecting Bhishma of high woes. And that feat of his was applauded by the foremost warriors of the Kuru army, consisting as it did of his having encountered the two Krishnas united together. Indeed, Aswathaman daily battled fearlessly amid the forces, having obtained from Drona all weapons with the methods also of their withdrawal. This one is the son of my preceptor. He is again the dear son of Drona. He is especially a Brahmana, and therefore worthy of my regard. Thinking so, that scorcher of foes, the heroic Vibhatsu, that foremost of warriors, showed mercy to the son of Bharadwaja. Avoiding the son of Drona, Kunti's son, endued with great prowess and having white steeds yoked unto his car, began to fight, displaying great quickness of arms and causing a great carnage of thy troops. Duryodhana then pierced that great bowman Bhima with 10 shafts winged with vulturine feathers, adorned with gold and whetted on stone. Thereupon Bhimasena, excited with wrath, took up a tough and well-adorned bow capable of taking the life of the foe, and also 10 sharp shafts. And steadily aiming those sharp-pointed shafts of fierce energy and impetuous velocity, and drawing the bowstring to his ear, he deeply pierced the king of the Kurus in his wide chest. Thereupon the gem hanging on his breast on threads of gold, surrounded by those shafts, looked beautiful like the sun in the firmament surrounded by the planets. Thy son, however, endued with great energy, thus struck by Bhimasena, could not bear it coolly, like a snake unable to bear the sounds of a man's slap. Excited with wrath and desirous of protecting his army, he then pierced Bhima in return, O king, with many shafts whetted on stone and endued with golden wings. Thus struggling in battle and mangling each other fiercely, those two mighty sons of thine looked like a pair of celestials. That tiger among men and slayer of hostile heroes, Vis, the son of Subhadra, pierced Chitrasena with many sharp shafts, and Purumitra also with 7 shafts. And piercing Satyavrata too with 70 shafts, that hero, resembling Indra himself in battle, began as it were to dance on the field, and caused us much pain. Chitrasena then pierced him in return with 10 shafts, and Satyavrata with 9, and Purumitra with 7. Then the son of Arjuna thus pierced, while yet covered with blood, cut off the large and beautiful bow of Chitrasena that was capable of checking force. And cutting through his coat of mail, he pierced his antagonist's breast with a shaft. Then the princes of thy army, all heroic and mighty warriors, excited with wrath and united together in that conflict, pierced him with sharp arrows. And Abhimanyu, acquainted with the mightiest weapons, smote them all with keen shafts. Beholding that feat of his, thy sons then surrounded the son of Arjuna, who was consuming thy army in that conflict, like a swelling fire of blazing flames consuming a heap of dry grass in summer. And the son of Subhadra, while smiting thy troops thus, seemed to glow in splendor. Seeing that conduct of his, thy grandson Lakshmana then, O monarch, quickly fell upon the son of Subhadra. Thereupon that mighty warrior Abhimanyu, excited with wrath, pierced Lakshmana graced with auspicious marks, as also his charioteer, with 6 sharp arrows. But Lakshmana also, O king, pierced Subhadra's son with many keen shafts. And that feat, O king, seemed to be highly wonderful. Then that mighty warrior, Vis, Abhimanyu, slaying the 4 steeds as also the charioteer of Lakshmana with sharp shafts, rushed towards the latter. Thereupon Lakshmana, that slayer of hostile heroes, staying on that car of his whose steeds had been slain and excited with wrath, hurled a dart towards the car of Subhadra's son. Abhimanyu, however, with his sharp arrows cut off that irresistible dart of fierce mien, resembling a snake and coming impetuously towards him. Then Kripa, taking Lakshmana upon his own car, bore him away from the conflict in the very sight of all the troops. Then when that awful conflict became general, the combatants rushed against one another desirous of taking another's life. And the mighty bowmen of thy army and the great car warriors of the Pandava host, prepared to lay down their lives in battle, slew one another. With hair dishevelled, divested of their coats of mail, deprived of their cars, and their bows broken, the Srinjayas fought with the Kurus with their bare arms. Then the mighty armed Bhishma, endued with great strength and excited with wrath, slew with his celestial weapons the troops of the high-souled Pandavas. And the earth became covered with the fallen bodies of elephants deprived of their guides of men and steeds and car warriors and cavalry soldiers. Thus ends the 73rd section in the Bhishmavada Parva of the Bhishma Parva. Section 74, Bhishmavada Parva continued. Sanjaya said, Then O king, the mighty armed Satyaki invincible in battle, drawing in that conflict an excellent bow capable of bearing a great strain shot innumerable winged arrows resembling snakes of virulent poison, displaying his wonderful lightness of hand. And while slaying his foes in battle, so quickly did he draw the bow, take out his arrows, fix them on the bowstring and letting them off throw them among the foe, that he then seemed to be a mass of clouds pouring a thick shower of rain. Beholding him then thus blazing up like a swelling fire, King Duryodhana o Bharata, dispatched 10,000 cars against him. But that great bowman, Satyaki, of prowess incapable of being baffled and possessed of great energy, slew with his celestial weapons all those mighty car warriors. Having achieved, bow in hand, that fierce feat, that hero then approached Burisravas in battle. And Burisravas also, that enhancer of the fame of the Kurus, beholding the Dhartashtra ranks thus felled by Yuyudhana, rushed in wrath against the latter. Drawing his great bow which resembled that of Indra himself in hue, he shot thousands of shafts, O monarch, looking like snakes of virulent poison and possessed of the strength of the thunder, displaying his extreme lightness of hand. Thereupon the combatants that followed Satyaki, unable to bear those shafts of fatal touch, fled away, O king, in all directions, abandoning, O monarch, the invincible Satyaki in that conflict. Beholding this, the mighty sons of Yuyudhana, all mighty car warriors of great renown, cased in excellent mail, bearing diverse arms and possessing excellent standards, approaching that great bowman, viz. Burisravas in battle, wrathfully addressed that warrior bearing on his standard the device of a sacrificial stake and said these words. Listen, O kinsman of the Kauravas, O thou that art possessed of great strength, come, fight in battle with us, i.e., with either all of us jointly or with each of us separately. Vanquishing us in battle thou mayst win great renown, or ourselves vanquishing thee will have great gratification. Thus addressed by them, that mighty hero endued with great strength and proud of his prowess, that foremost of men, beholding them before him replied unto them saying, Ye heroes, ye have said well. If such be now your wish, fight ye then all together with care. I shall slay all of you in battle. Thus addressed by him, those heroic and mighty bowmen endued with great activity covered that chastiser of foes with a thick shower of arrows. And it was towards the afternoon, O king, that that dreadful battle took place between Burisravas alone on one side and the many united together on the other. And those 10 heroes covered that single mighty car warrior with showers of arrows like the clouds showering rain on a mountain cliff in the season of rains. That mighty car warrior, however, cut off those clouds of shafts shot by them resembling the fatal darts of death or the very thunder in effulgence, before they could reach him. They then surrounding that mighty armed warrior endeavored to slay him. But the son of Somadatta, excited with rage, cut off their boss O Bharata, and then their heads with sharp shafts. Thus slain they fell down O monarch, like mighty trees felled by the thunder. Beholding then his mighty sons thus slain in battle, the Vrishni hero Satyaki O king, uttering a loud roar, rushed against Burisravas. And those mighty warriors then each pressed his car against the other. And each of them in that combat slew the other's car steeds. And both deprived of their cars, those mighty warriors jumped down on the ground. And both taking up large scimitars and excellent shields encountered each other. And those tigers among men, stationed for the encounter shone brightly. Then Bhimasena O king, quickly coming up to Satyaki thus armed with an excellent scimitar, took him up on his own car. And thy son also O monarch, speedily took up Burisravas on his car, in that battle in the very sight of all the bowmen. Meanwhile, during the continuance of that battle, the Pandavas O bull of Bharata's race, excited with wrath fought with that mighty car warrior Bhishma. And when the sun assumed a red hue, Dhananjaya exerting himself actively slew 25,000 great car warriors. These, urged on by Duryodhana for slaying Partha, were thus completely destroyed before they could even come up to him, like insects on a blazing fire. Then the Matsyas and the Kekayas, all accomplished in the science of arms, surrounded that mighty car warrior Partha as also his son for supporting them. Just at that time the sun disappeared and all the combatants seemed to be deprived of their senses. Then at twilight O king, thy sire Devavrata, his animals having been tired caused the troops to be withdrawn. And the troops of both the Pandavas and the Kurus, filled with fear and anxiety in course of that dreadful encounter, proceeded to their respective camps. The Pandavas with the Srinjayas and the Kauravas also rested for the night agreeably to the rules of military science. Thus ends the 74th section in the Bhishmavada Parva of the Bhishma Parva. Section 75, Bhishmavada Parva continued. Sanjaya said, having rested for a while O king, both the Kurus and the Pandavas after the night had passed away, once more went out for battle. And then loud was the uproar O king, that arose of mighty car warriors as they prepared for battle, and of tuskers as these were being equipped for the conflict, and of infantry as they put on their armor, and of steeds also O Bharata. And the blare of conches and the beat of drums became deafening in all parts of the field. Then King Yudhishthira addressed Drishtadyumna and said, O mighty armed one, dispose the troops in the array called Makara that scorcheth the foe. Thus addressed by Pritha's son, that mighty car warrior Drishtadyumna, that foremost of combatants on cars, issued the order O great king to the car warriors for forming the Makara array. Drupada and Dhananjaya the son of Pandu, formed the head of that array, and Sahadeva and that mighty car warrior Nakula formed its two eyes. And the mighty Bhimasena formed its beak. And Subhadra's son and the sons of Draupadi and the Rakshasa Ghatotkacha and Satyaki and King Yudhishthira the just, were stationed in its neck. And King Virata, that commander of a large division, formed its back, supported by Drishtadyumna and a large force. And the 5 Kekaya brothers consisted its left wing, and that tiger among men, viz., Drishtaketu and Chekitna of great prowess stationed in the right wing, stood for protecting that array. And its 2 feet O monarch, were constituted by that mighty car warrior, the blessed Kuntiboja and Satanika, supported by a large force. And that great bowman, the mighty Sikhundin, surrounded by the Somakas and Iravat, were stationed in the tail of that Makara array. And having O Bharata, formed their great array the Pandavas O monarch, equipped in mail, at dawn again stood for battle. And with elephants and steeds and cars and infantry, and with standards upraised and umbrellas set up and armed with bright whetted weapons, they quickly proceeded against the Kauravas. Then thy sire Devavrata, beholding the Pandava army thus arrayed, disposed his army, O king, in counter-array after the form of a huge crane. And in its beak was Bharadwaja's son Drona. And Aswathaman and Kripa, O monarch, formed its 2 eyes. And that foremost of all bowmen, viz. Kritavarman, united with the ruler of the Kambojas and with the Valikas, was stationed, O king, in its head. And in its neck, O Bharata, was Surasena and thy son Duryodhana, O king, surrounded by many kings. And the ruler of the Pragyotishas, united with the Madras, the Soviras, and the Kekayas, and surrounded by a large force, was stationed, O king, in its breasts. And Susaman the king of Prasthala, accompanied by his own troops, stood accoutred in mail, in the left wing. And the Tusharas, the Yavanas and the Sakas along with the Chalikas stood in the right wing, O Bharata, of that array. And Shratayush and Satayush and Somadatta's son, O sire, were stationed in the rear of that array, protecting one another. Then the Pandavas, O king, rushed against the Kauravas for battle. The sun, O Bharata, had risen when the battle commenced. And elephants proceeded against elephants. And horsemen rushed against horsemen, cavalriers against cavalriers, O king, and against elephants also in that dreadful conflict. And carmen rushed against riders of elephants, and riders of elephants against horsemen. And cavalriers engaged with foot soldiers, and cavalry with infantry. And all the warriors, O king, excited with wrath, rushed against one another in battle. And the Pandava army, protected by Bhimasena and Arjuna and the twins, looked beautiful like the night decorated with stars. And thy army also, with Bhishma and Kripa and Drona and Salya and Duryodhana, and others, shone like the firmament spangled with the planets. And Bhimasena the son of Kunti, endued with great prowess, beholding Drona, rushed against the division of Bharadwaja's son, borne by his steeds of great fleetness. Then Drona, excited with wrath in that conflict and endued with great energy, pierced Bhima with 9 shafts made wholly of iron, aiming his vital limbs. Deeply pierced by Bharadwaja's son in that conflict, Bhima dispatched Drona's charioteer to the region of Yama. Thereupon the son of Bharadwaja, endued with great prowess, himself restraining his steeds, began to consume the Pandava army like fire consuming a heap of cotton. And while thus slaughtered, O king, by Drona and Bhishma, the Srinjayas along with the Kekayas took to flight. And so thy troops also, mangled by Bhima and Arjuna, became deprived of their senses as they stood, like a beautiful female in her pride. And in that conflict destructive of heroes, great was the distress, O Bharata, that befell both thy army and theirs. And we beheld the wonderful sight, O Bharata, of the troops fighting with one another regardless of their lives. And the Pandavas and the Kauravas, O king, in that conflict fought with one another, counteracting one another's weapons. Thus ends the 75th section in the Bhishmavada Parva of the Bhishma Parva. Section 76, Bhishmavada Parva continued. Dhritarashtra said, Our army is possessed of many excellencies, consisting of diverse forces. Its efficiency is great. It is again arrayed according to the rules of science and therefore ought to be irresistible. It is attached to us exceedingly and always devoted to us. It is submissive and free from the faults of drunkenness and licentiousness. Its prowess had before been tested. The soldiers are neither very old nor very young. They are neither lean nor corpulent. Of active habits, of well-developed and strong frames, they are free from disease. They are cased in mail and well equipped with arms. They are exercised in every kind of weapons. They are skilled in encounters with swords, with bare arms, and with maces. They are well exercised in lances, sabres, and darts, as also in iron clubs, short arrows, javelins and mallets. They are devoted to all kinds of armed exercises, and are adepts in mounting upon and descending from the backs of elephants, in moving forward and stepping back, in smiting effectually, in marching and retreating. Many a time have they been tested in the management of elephants and steeds and cars. Having been examined duly, they have been entertained on pay, and not for the sake of lineage, nor from favor, nor from relationship, nor from strength of attachments, nor from connections of birth and blood. They are all respectable and honest, and their kinsmen have been well treated and gratified by us. We have done them many good offices. They are besides all renowned men and endued with great mental vigor. O son, they are again protected by many foremost of men endued with great activity, and of famous achievements, resembling the very regents of the world and renowned over the whole earth. Innumerable Kshatriyas, respected throughout the world, and who have of their own will sided us with their forces and followers also protect them. Indeed, our army is like the vast ocean filled with the water of innumerable rivers running from all directions. It abounds with elephants and with cars which, though destitute of wings, yet resemble the winged tenants of the air. Vast numbers of combatants constitute the waters of that ocean, and the steeds and other animals constitute its terrible waves. Innumerable swords and maces and darts and arrows and lances constitute the oars piled on that ocean. Abounding with standards and ornaments and adorned with cloth inlaid with gold and gems, the rushing steeds and elephants constitute the winds agitating it into fury. Our host therefore really resembles the vast shoreless ocean roaring in rage. And that host is protected by Drona and Bhishma and by Kirtavaman and Kripa and Dusasana, and others headed by Jayadratha. It is also protected by Bhagadatta and Vikarna, by Drona's son and Suvila's son, and Valika, and by many other mighty and high-souled heroes of the world. That our army should yet be slaughtered in battle is due only to predestined fate, O Sanjaya. Neither men nor highly blessed rishis of old ever beheld such preparations for battle on earth before. That so large an army, mustered according to science, and attached to us by wealth, should yet be slaughtered in battle, alas, what can it be but the result of destiny? O Sanjaya, all these seem to be unnatural. Indeed, Vidura had often said what was both beneficial and desirable. But my wicked son Duryodhana would not accept it. I believe that high-souled and well-knowing person had foreseen all that is now happening, and hence the counsel he gave. Or, O Sanjaya, all this, in all its details, had been prearranged by him, for that which is ordained by the Creator must happen as ordained and cannot be otherwise. Thus ends the 76th section in the Bhishma Parva of the Bhishma Parva. Section 77, Bhishma Parva continued. Sanjaya said, Thou hast, O king, in consequence of thy own fault been overtaken by this calamity. O bull of Bharata's race, the faults which thou, O monarch, hadst seen in that unrighteous course of conduct towards the Pandavas, were not seen by Duryodhana. It was through thy fault, O king, that the match at dice had taken place. And it is through thy fault that this battle hath taken place with the Pandavas. Having committed a sin, do thou therefore reap the fruit of that sin of thine. One reapeth the fruit of acts perpetrated by one's own self. Do thou therefore, O king, reap the fruit of thy own acts both here and hereafter. Therefore, O monarch, though overtaken by this calamity, be calm still and listen, O sire, to the account of the battle as I recite it. The heroic Bhimasena, having with his sharp shafts broken thy mighty array, then came upon all the younger brothers of Duryodhana. The mighty Bhima, beholding Dusasana and Durvaisaha and Dusaha and Dharmada and Jaya, and Jayasena and Vikarna and Chitrasena and Sudarsana, and Charuchitra and Suvarman and Duskarna and Karna, and many other mighty warriors excited with rage, of the Dhartashtra host near enough to himself, penetrated into thy mighty array that was protected by Bhishma in that battle. Then, beholding him in their midst, all those warriors said, Ye kings, let us take this one's life. Thereupon that son of Pritha was surrounded by those cousins of his who were firmly resolved to take his life. And Bhima then resembled Surya himself of fierce splendor, surrounded by the mighty planets of evil nature at the time of the universal destruction. And although the son of Pandu was there in the very midst of the Kaurava array, yet fear entered not his heart, as said did not that of Indra while surrounded by the Danavas in the fierce battle of old between the celestials and the Asuras. Then thousands of warriors armed with all weapons and fully prepared for battle overwhelmed his single self with terrible shafts. Thereupon the heroic Bhima, disregarding the sons of Dhritarashtra, slew in that conflict many foremost warriors of the Kaurava army fighting from cars or upon the back of elephants and steeds. And ascertaining the purpose harbored by those cousins of his who were bent upon his destruction, the mighty Bhima set his heart upon slaying them all. Then leaving his car and taking up his mace, the son of Pandu began to smite that very sea of Dhritarashtra troops. Then when Bhimasena thus penetrated the Dhritarashtra host, Dhrishtadyumna the son of Prishatha, forsaking Drona with whom he had been engaged, quickly proceeded to the spot where Suvala's son was stationed. That bull among men, baffling countless warriors of thy army, came upon the empty car of Bhimasena in that battle. And beholding in that conflict Vaizoka, the charioteer of Bhimasena, Dhrishtadyumna O king, became exceedingly cheerless and almost deprived of his senses. With voice choked in tears and sighing as he spoke, he asked Vaizoka in grief saying, "Where is Bhima who is dear to me as my life itself?" Vaizoka then, joining his hands replied unto Dhrishtadyumna saying, "The mighty son of Pandu, endued with great strength, ordering me to wait for him here, hath alone penetrated into the Dhritarashtra host that resembled the very ocean. That tiger among men very cheerfully said unto me these words, Wait for me O charioteer, restraining the steeds for a short space of time, that is, till I slay those that are bent upon my destruction." Beholding then the mighty Bhima rushing mace in hand, all our troops that supported him became filled with delight. Then in this fierce and terrible battle O prince, thy friend, breaking the mighty array of the foe hath penetrated into it. Hearing these words of Vaizoka, Prishatha's son Dhrishtadyumna, endued with great strength, said unto the charioteer these words on the field of battle, "What need have I today of life itself, if forgetting my affection for the Pandavas, I forsake Bhima in battle? If I return today without Bhima, what will the Kshatriyas say of me? What will they say of me when they will learn that while I was on the field, Bhima penetrated alone into the hostile array making a single opening in it? The gods with Indra at their head visit him with evil who, forsaking his comrades in battle, returneth home unhurt. The mighty Bhima again is my friend and kinsman. He is devoted to me, and I also am devoted to that slayer of foes. Therefore I will go thither, whither Bhima hath gone. Behold me slaying the foe like Vasava slaying the Danava." Having said this, the heroic Dhrishtadyumna O Bharata, proceeded through the midst of the foe, along the tracks opened by Bhimasena and marked by elephants crushed with his mace. He then obtained sight of Bhimasena consuming the hostile ranks or felling Kshatriya warriors like the tempest devastating rows of trees. And car warriors and horsemen and foot soldiers and tuskers, while thus slaughtered by him, uttered loud cries of woe. And cries of, "O end alas!" arose from thy troops O sire, while they were slaughtered by the victorious Bhima, accomplished in all modes of warfare. Then the Kaurava warriors all accomplished in arms, surrounding Vrikodara on all sides, fearlessly poured upon him their arrowy showers at the same time. Then the mighty son of Prishatha, beholding that foremost of all wielders of weapons, that celebrated hero Vis, the son of Pandu thus attacked on all sides by fierce ranks of foes in close array, mangled with shafts, treading the field on foot, and vomiting the poison of his wrath, mace in hand and looking like the destroyer himself at the hour of the universal dissolution, quickly approached him and comforted him by his presence. And taking him upon his car, and plucking the arrows off from all his limbs, and embracing him warmly, the high-souled son of Prishata comforted Bhimasena in the very midst of the foe. Then thy son, in that terrible conflict, quickly coming up to his brothers, said unto them, This son of Drupada of wicked soul, is now united with Bhimasena. Let us all approach him together for slaying him. Let not the foe seek our ranks for battle. Hearing these words, the Dhartashtra's, thus urged on by the command of their eldest brother and unable to put up with the foe, quickly rushed with appraised weapons for slaying Dhrishtadyumna like fierce comets at the hour of the universal dissolution. Taking up their beautiful bows, those heroes, making the very earth shiver with the twang of their bowstring and the rattle of their car wheels, showered shafts on Drupada's son, like the clouds covering the mountain breast with torrents of rain. But that hero, conversant with all modes of warfare, though thus struck with sharp arrows in that battle, did not waver. On the other hand, that mighty warrior, the youthful son of Drupada, beholding those heroic sons of thine staying before him in battle and exerting themselves to their utmost, being desirous of slaying them, applied that fierce weapon called Pramohana and engaged with thy sons, O king, like Indra with the Danavas in battle. Then those heroic warriors were deprived of their senses, their minds and strength afflicted by the Pramohana weapon, and the Kauravas fled away in all directions with their steeds and elephants and cars, beholding those sons of thine deprived of their senses in a swoon like those whose hours had come. And at that time Drona, the foremost of all wielders of weapons, approaching Drupada, pierced him with 3 fierce shafts. And that monarch then, O king, viz. Drupada, deeply pierced by Drona, left the battle, O Bharata, remembering his former hostility with Bharadwaja's son. Thereupon Drona, endued with great prowess, having thus vanquished Drupada, blew his conch. And hearing the blare of his conch, all the Somakas were struck with fear. Then Drona, possessed of great energy, that foremost of all wielders of weapons, heard of thy sons being deprived of their senses in battle with the Pramohana weapon. Then the son of Bharadwaja, desirous of rescuing the princes, speedily left that part of the field where he was and proceeded to the place where thy sons were. And that mighty bowman, viz. Bharadwaja's son of great prowess, there beheld Dhrishtadyumna and Bhima careering through the field in that dreadful conflict. And that mighty warrior beheld thy sons deprived of their senses. Taking up then the weapon called Prajnath, he neutralized the Pramohana weapon that Dhrishtadyumna had shot. Then thy sons, those mighty warriors, when their senses returned once more, proceeded to battle with Bhima and Prishata's son. Then Yudhishthira, addressing his own troops, said, Let 12 brave warriors cased in mail and headed by Subhadra's son, follow to the utmost of their might, the track of Bhima and Prishata's son in battle. Let intelligence be had of those 2 warriors. My heart is very uneasy. Thus ordered by the king, those heroes possessed of great prowess in battle and proud of their manliness, saying, Yes, all proceeded forward when the sun had reached the meridian. And those chastisers of foes, viz. the Kaikeyas and the sons of Draupadi, and Dhrishtaketu of great prowess, supported by a large force and with Abhimanyu at their head and disposing themselves in the array called Sichimuka, penetrated into that car division of the Dhartashtra's in battle. And thy troops, O king, struck with the fear of Bhimasena and deprived of their senses by Dhrishtadyumna, were unable to resist the rush of those mighty bowmen headed by Abhimanyu. And they were quite helpless, like a lady in the streets. And those mighty bowmen with standards variegated with gold cutting through the Kaurava ranks, proceeded with great speed for rescuing Dhrishtadyumna and Vrikodara. And the latter, beholding those mighty bowmen headed by Abhimanyu, became filled with delight and continued to smite down thy ranks. And the heroic prince of Panchala, Vis, the son of Prishata, seeing meanwhile his preceptor advancing towards him with great speed, no longer wished to compass the death of thy sons. Causing Vrikodara then to be taken upon the car of the king of the Kaikayas, he rushed in great wrath against Drona, accomplished in arrow and all weapons. And that slayer of foes, Vis, the valiant son of Bharadwaja, excited with rage, cut off with a broad-headed shaft the bow of Prishata's son, who was rushing towards him with impetuosity. And remembering the bread he had eaten of his master and desirous of doing good to Duryodhana, he also sped hundreds of shafts after Prishata's son. Then that slayer of hostile heroes, Vis, the son of Prishata, taking up another bow, pierced Drona with 70 shafts whetted on stone and furnished with wings of gold. Then that grinder of foes, Vis, Drona, once more cut off his bow and dispatched his 4 steeds to Yama's abode with 4 excellent arrows, and also slew his charioteer O Bharata, with a broad-headed shaft. Then that mighty warrior of strong arms, Vis, Dhrishtadyumna, quickly descending from that car whose steeds had been slain, ascended the great car of Abhimanyu. Then Drona caused the Pandava army consisting of cars, elephants and steeds, to tremble in the very sight of Bhimasena and the intelligent son of Prishata. Beholding then that army thus broken by Drona of immeasurable energy, all those mighty warriors were incapable of checking its flight. And that army thus slaughtered by Drona with his sharp shafts, began to move in eddies there, like the agitated sea. And beholding the Pandava army in that condition, thy troops were filled with delight. And seeing the preceptor excited with rage and thus consuming the ranks of the foe, all thy warriors O Bharata, set up loud shouts and uttered exclamations in praise of Drona. Thus ends the 77th section in the Bhishma Parva of the Bhishma Parva. Section 78, Bhishma Parva continued. Sanjaya said, then King Duryodhana, regaining his senses, once more began to resist Bhima with showers of arrows. And once more those mighty warriors Vis, thy sons united together, began to fight valiantly with Bhimasena. And Bhimasena also of mighty arms during that battle, having got his car, ascended it and proceeded to the spot where thy sons were. And taking up a strong and very tough bow adorned with gold and capable of taking the lives of foes, he pierced thy sons in that conflict with his shafts. Then King Duryodhana struck the mighty Bhimasena at the very vitals with a long shaft of exceeding sharpness. Then that mighty bowman, pierced thus deeply by thy son, bow in hand forcibly drawing his own with eyes red in wrath, struck Duryodhana in his 2 arms and the breast with 3 shafts. But struck thus O king, he moved not, like a prince of mountains. Beholding then those 2 heroes excited with rage and smiting each other, the younger brothers of Duryodhana, all of whom were heroes, prepared to lay down their lives, remembering their previously formed scheme of afflicting Vrikodara of terrible deeds, set about firmly resolved for smiting him down. And as they fell upon him in battle, Bhimasena of great strength rushed against them O king, like an elephant rushing against an attacking compeer. Excited with fury and endued with great energy, that celebrated hero then O king, afflicted thy son Chitrasena with a long arrow. And as regards thy other sons, that descendant of Bharata smote them all in that battle with divers kinds of shafts furnished with wings of gold and endued with great impetus. Then King Yudhishthira the Just, disposing all his own divisions, properly dispatched 12 mighty warriors including Abhimanyu and others to follow Bhimasena behind. Those O king, all proceeded against those mighty warriors, Vis, thy sons. Beholding those heroes on their cars resembling the sun himself or the fire in splendor, those great bowmen of blazing effulgence and superb beauty looking resplendent in that dreadful conflict with ornaments of gold, thy mighty sons abandoned Bhima with whom they had been fighting. The sons of Kunti, however, could not bear the sight of their abandoning the conflict alive. Thus ends the 78th section in the Bhishma Parva of the Bhishma Parva. Section 79, Bhishma Parva continued. Sanjaya said, Then Abhimanyu, accompanied by Bhimasena pursuing thy sons, afflicted them all. Then the mighty warriors of thy army, including Duryodhana and others, beholding Abhimanyu and Bhimasena united with Prishata's son in the midst of the Kauravas' troops, took up their bows, and borne by their fleet steeds rushed to the spot where those warriors were. And on that afternoon, O king, a dreadful conflict took place between the mighty combatants of thy army and those of the foe of Bharata. And Abhimanyu, having in that fierce battle slain the steeds of Vikarna, pierced the latter with 25 small arrows. Then that mighty warrior Vikarna, abandoning that car whose steeds had been slain, mounted on the resplendent car, O king, of Chitrasena. Then thus stationed on the same car, viz., those two brothers of Kuru's race, the son of Arjuna covered O Bharata, with showers of arrows. Then Durjaya and Vikarna pierced Abhimanyu with 5 shafts made wholly of iron. Abhimanyu however shook not in the least but stood firm like the mountain Meru. Dusasana in that battle, O sire, fought with the 5 Kekaya brothers. All these, O great king, seemed exceedingly wonderful. The sons of Draupadi, excited with rage, resisted Duryodhana in that battle. And each of them, O king, pierced thy son with 3 shafts. Thy son also, invincible in battle, pierced each of the sons of Draupadi, O monarch, with sharp shafts. And pierced by them in return and bathed in blood, he shone like a hill with rivulets of water mixed with red chalk gliding down its breast. And the mighty Bhishma also in that battle, O king, afflicted the Pandava army like a herdsman belaboring his herd. Then, O monarch, the twang of Gandiva was heard of Partha, who was engaged in slaughtering the foe on the right of the army. And in that part of the field headless trunks stood up by thousands, amongst the troops of Bharata, of both the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And the field of battle resembled an ocean whose water was blood, and whose eddies were the shafts shot by the combatants. And the elephants constituted the islands of that ocean, and the steeds its waves. And cars constituted the boats by which brave men crossed it. And many brave combatants, with arms cut off, divested of armor and hideously mutilated, were seen lying there in hundreds and thousands. And with the bodies of infuriate elephants deprived of life and bathed in blood, the field of battle, O Bharata, looked as if strewn with hills. And the wonderful sight we saw there, O Bharata, was that neither in their army nor in thine was a single person that was unwilling to fight. And thus, O monarch, did those brave warriors, of both thy army and the Pandavas fight, seeking glory and desirous of victory. Thus ends the 79th section in the Bhishma Parva of the Bhishma Parva. Section 80, Bhishma Parva continued. Sanjaya said, Then when the sun assumed a red hue, King Duryodhana, desirous of battle, rushed towards Bhima from desire of slaying him. Beholding that heroic warrior cherishing deep animosity thus coming towards him, Bhimasena, excited with great wrath, said these words, That hour hath come which I have desired for so many years. I will slay thee today if thou dost not abandon the battle. Slaying thee I shall today dispel the sorrows of Kunti as also of Draupadi and the woes that were ours during our exile in the woods. Filled with pride, thou hadst formerly humiliated the sons of Pandu. Behold, O son of Gandhari, the dire fruit of that sinful behavior. Following the counsels of Karna as also of Suvala's son and reckoning the Pandavas little, thou hadst formerly behaved towards them as thou hadst listed. Thou hadst also disregarded Krishna who begged thee for peace. With a joyous heart didst thou dispatch Uluka to us with thy messages. For all these, I shall slay thee today with all thy kinsmen, and thus avenge all those offences of thine of former days. Having said these words, Bhima, bending his bow and stretching it repeatedly and taking up a number of terrible shafts whose effulgence resembled that of the lightning itself and filled with wrath, quickly sped 36 of them at Duryodhana. And those shafts resembled the flames of a blazing fire coursed straight with the force of the thunderbolt. And then he pierced Duryodhana's bow with 2 shafts, and his charioteer with 2. And with 4 shafts he dispatched Duryodhana's 4 steeds to the regions of Yama. And that grinder of force then, with 2 shafts shot with great force, cut off in that battle the king's umbrella from his excellent car. And with 3 other shafts he cut off his handsome and blazing standard. And having cut it off he uttered a loud shout in the very sight of thy son. And that beautiful standard of the latter, decked with divers gems, suddenly fell down on the earth from his car like a flash of lightning from the clouds. And all the kings beheld that beautiful standard of the Kuru king, bearing the device of an elephant, decked with gems and blazing like the sun, fall down cut off by Bhimasena. And that mighty car warrior, viz. Bhima, then pierced Duryodhana in that battle, smiling the while, with 10 shafts like a guide piercing a mighty elephant with the hook. Then that foremost of car warriors, viz. The mighty king of the Sindhus, supported by many brave warriors, placed himself on the flank of Duryodhana. And then that great car warrior, viz. Kripa O king, caused the vindictive Duryodhana, that son of Kuru's race, of immeasurable energy, to mount on his own car. Then King Duryodhana, deeply pierced by Bhimasena and feeling great pain, sat down on the terrace of that car. Then Jayadratha, desirous of slaying Bhima, surrounded him on all sides with several thousands of cars. Then O king, Drishtaketu and Abhimanyu of great energy and the Kekayas and the sons of Draupadi, all encountered thy sons. And the high-souled Abhimanyu smote them all, piercing each with 5 straight shafts resembling the bolts of heaven or death's selves, shot from his excellent bow. Thereupon all of them, unable to bear it coolly, showered on that foremost of car warriors, viz. The son of Subhadra, a perfect downpour of sharp shafts like rain-charged clouds pouring rain on the breast of the mountains of Meru. But Abhimanyu, that invincible warrior accomplished in arms, thus afflicted by them in battle, caused all thy sons, O king, to tremble like the wielder of the thunderbolt, causing the mighty Asuras to tremble in the battle between the celestials and the latter. Then that foremost of car warriors, O Bharata, shot 14 broad-headed shafts, fierce and looking like snakes of virulent poison at Vikarna. Endued with great prowess and as if dancing in that battle, he felled with those shafts the standard of Vikarna from his car and slew also his charioteer and steeds. Then that mighty car warrior, the son of Subhadra, again sped at Vikarna many other arrows that were well-tempered, straight-going and capable of penetrating every armor. And those arrows furnished with feathers of the Kanka bird, coming at Vikarna and passing through his body, entered the earth like hissing snakes. And those arrows with wings and points decked with gold, bathed in Vikarna's blood, seemed to vomit blood on the earth. Beholding Vikarna thus pierced, his other uterine brothers rushed in that battle against those car warriors headed by Subhadra's son. And when these invincible warriors upon their own cars came upon those combatants of the Pandava army, resplendent like so many suns and staying on their cars, both began to pierce one another. And Durmukha, having pierced Shratakarman with 5 shafts, cut off the latter's standard with a single shaft and then pierced his charioteer with 7. And advancing closer, he slew with 6 shafts his 4 steeds, fleet as the wind and cased in golden armor, and then felled his charioteer. Shratakarman, however, staying on that car of his, the steeds of which had been slain, hurled in great wrath a dart blazing like a fierce meteor. That dart, blazing with effulgence, passing through the renowned Durmukha's hard coat of mail, penetrated into the earth. Meanwhile the mighty Sutasoma, beholding Shratakarman deprived of his car, caused him to mount upon his own car in the very sight of all the troops. The heroic Stratagati rushed against thy son Jayatsena in that battle, desirous, O king, of slaying that renowned warrior. Then thy son Jayatsena, O king, with a sharp arrow having a horseshoe head, smiling the while cut off the bow of the high-souled Stratagati as the latter came along, stretching it in his hands. Then Satanika, beholding his uterine brother's bow cut off, endued as he was with great valor, quickly came at that spot, repeatedly roaring like a lion. And Satanika, drawing his bow in that battle with great force, speedily pierced Jayatsena with 10 shafts, and uttered a loud shout like an infuriate elephant. And with another arrow of sharp point and capable of penetrating every armor, Satanika deeply pierced Jayatsena in the chest. Just at that time, Dashkarna, who was near his brother Jayatsena, infuriate with anger, cut off Satanika's bow and arrow. Then the mighty Satanika, taking up another excellent bow capable of bearing a great strain, aimed many sharp shafts. And addressing Dashkarna in the presence of his brother Jayatsena, saying, "Wait, wait," he sped at him those sharp and blazing shafts resembling so many snakes. And then he speedily cut off Dashkarna's bow with 1 arrow, and slew his charioteer Osaya with 2, and then pierced Dashkarna himself with 7 arrows. And that spotless warrior then with a 12 sharp shafts slew all the steeds of Dashkarna that were fleet as the mind and of variegated hue. And then with another broad-headed arrow, well aimed and capable of coursing swiftly, Satanika, excited with great wrath, deeply pierced Dashkarna in the chest. And thereupon the latter fell down on the earth like a tree struck with lightning. Beholding Dashkarna slain, 5 mighty warriors, O king, surrounded Satanika on all sides from desire of slaying him. And they struck the renowned Satanika with showers of arrows. Then the 5 Kekaya brothers, excited with wrath, approached Satanika for rescuing him. Beholding the latter coming upon them, thy sons, those mighty warriors, rushed towards them like elephants rushing against mighty elephants. These amongst thy sons, viz., Durmukha and Durjaya, and the youthful Dharmarjna and Satranjaya and Satrusha, all renowned warriors excited with rage, proceeded, O king, against the 5 Kekava brothers. On their cars that resembled fortified towns, unto which were yoked steeds decked with ornaments and which were graced with beautiful standards of variegated hue, those heroes wielding excellent bows and cased in beautiful coats of mail and owning excellent standards, entered the hostile army like lions entering one forest from another. Smiting one another, fierce and terrific was the battle that ensued between them and the foe, in which cars and elephants got entangled with one another. Cherishing feelings of hostility towards one another, the terrible battle in which they took part lasted for a short space of time about sunset, increasing the population of Yama's kingdom. And warriors and horsemen by thousands were strewn over the field. And Bhishma, the son of Santanu, excited with wrath, began to slaughter the troops of the high-souled Pandavas with his straight shafts. And with his arrows he began to dispatch the combatants of the Panchalas to the domains of Yama. And the grandsire, having thus broken the ranks of the Pandavas, at last withdrew his troops and retired, O king, to his encampment. And King Yudhishthira also, beholding both Dhrishtadyumna and Vrikodara, smelt their heads, and filled with joy retired to his tents. Thus ends the 88th section in the Bhishma Parva of the Bhishma Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.